There is a cost of success that you don't realize at the time because you are so tunnel vision about trying to get on in your career. I have zero regrets about anything I've done. And I am so lucky that I have friends and family who are so proud of me. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm not the kind of person that has regrets, but I do look back and learn from that. And it has made me want to show up differently as I go on. My name's Taz. I'm a woman. I'm brown. I grew up in Birmingham. I was raised by a single mum on free school meals. I've spent the last few years navigating corporate exec life. And what I've learned over the years is there is a set of corporate rules nobody is saying out loud. And that's why I created this podcast. This space is for us to unpack those rules and to help you figure out how you want to navigate the system and engage with it. I would love for you to follow on Office Real Talk on Instagram or TikTok and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts so we can get more of us listening and winning in the corporate world. Hi everybody, welcome to Office Real Talk with Taz. This is episode 14, but also episode 4 of the Lived Experience series. So this is where I get really personal about things I've been through in my career, where by talking about these things, hopefully it provides a little bit of relief, I suppose, to know that someone else has gone through it. I almost didn't record this one, but I think it's one we don't talk about enough. And I thought, well, if I'm being vulnerable and putting myself out there, and I've done ADHD and I've done gender and I've done ethnicity and I've done toxic work environments, why not? And I want to talk about the cost of success on our relationships and our desire to be successful and how it impacts how we show up with the people that we have relationships with, whatever those relationships are. So everybody tells you about getting on in your career, right? Everybody tells you to make it. Everybody tells you to work really hard. You know, you're always taught about all of those things. And also when you're working hard, all you see is tunnel vision sometimes. You're like, I want to work, I want to work, I want to work, I want to get on. I grew up where a bunch of my friends were getting married, having relationships, having kids. And I was going to live in the Philippines and I was, you know, kind of building my career. And I don't have any regrets of any of that. But I remember sitting down with someone and they said to me once, it's going to be really, really hard for you to have a relationship with a man. And I'm not just going to talk about romantic relationships here. I'm going to get into other stuff. But it's going to be really hard for you to have a relationship with a man because, you know, you work so much. You're really like committed to your work. Most men are not going to be okay with that. And a lot of men are not going to be okay with the fact that you're more successful than them and you earn more than them. And boy, were they right, but did I not know it. I'd filed it away, I'd compartmentalized it. I wasn't really interested in what they had to say. But actually, as I've reflected, and especially since I started the podcast, and I look back to the last 2 or 3 years of my career in particular, and since, you know, living with my husband and my friendships and everything else, I've really been interrogating the cost of work on your relationships. So let me tell you about my lived experiences. So one of them was, and I remember this, it was like in our old house. I was with my mum. And I remember we were sitting there together and she was talking to me and I was just like tapping away on my laptop. And she said to me that day, she went, you don't listen when I talk. That laptop is going to be the death of you one day. And it's the thing that keeps you from your family. And I remember it so much. It's like a core memory. And it's funny, right? Because we were on holiday recently and I take my mum away every year for her birthday. And I took her away and we were like in this like really nice restaurant and it was her birthday and she was like, oh, it's so nice. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, I said, remember when you said to me that laptop is going to be the death of you and it's going to get in between us? She was like, yeah. And she started laughing. And I remember what I said to her that day when she said it to me and at the restaurant at dinner. I said, Mum, this is going to be the reason. This laptop's going to be the reason we don't have to live like this anymore. It's going to be the reason you don't have to work as hard as you do anymore. But what I didn't realize is whilst I was busy trying to provide, trying to get our lives together, that I wasn't present in the room. Over the years with my family, especially, you know, I left Birmingham 12 years ago and I've come to London. When I first came here, I used to go every weekend. And as I started building a life here, it became harder and harder to go back. And the truth is, after a week at work, sometimes you're just so exhausted, you can't fathom getting on train or going home and being on. I've got young nephews and a niece. I love spending time with them. I'm a very, very present auntie, but sometimes I just don't feel like I've got the mental capacity to be on and present. And that has got harder as I've grown older. It's got harder as my ADHD's got worse. It's got harder as I am navigating my own things in life, and just being present has become more difficult. I'll never forget one of my first holidays with one of my best friends. So Nicola, she's my best friend since school. And up until more recently, we used to go on holiday every single year, right? In May, every single year we'd go on a big trip. And one of our first trips was Mykonos, and we had the time of our lives. But I remember walking through Mykonos town with her, and my BlackBerry, my work phone rang, and this, so you can imagine how long ago that was. And I got a call from one of my team, and they'd called me, and it was a really important thing, right? The regulator had called, and it was all of this stuff. But I remember we were just walking through the town, and we're having like a nice time, and I'm on the phone to someone from my team, and we're talking about a regulatory thing, and I'm like, ugh, I would never do that now. I would never do that now, right? Like, I just didn't realize that in that moment. I was just meant to be walking through the town, just two girls, just having fun. And we were mid-conversation. I was like, oh, sorry, I've got to get this. And I know that happens in life, but it was work. Could it have waited? I don't know. But I was just present. I remember being in Barcelona with my two friends who I lived with. We went to Barcelona for a trip. And I remember we were going to a coffee shop. And I just remember being on the phone to one of my team and getting into a whole conversation. Now, that was all in the same job, by the way. And I think my identity very much was work then. It's why I'd moved to London. It's who I was. But yeah, I wasn't present for my friends. Then I remember about 2 years ago when I got the job I'm doing now, when I got that. And I remember getting that job and it was like, I had to learn it and figure it out. So in the days, I was meeting the teams. But in the evenings, I was coming home and working. But I was sitting in the living room with my husband, with the TV on, and I was working. And it wasn't until about 4 or 5 weeks later where I looked at him and he was like, oh, it's the first time like we've watched TV together in a while. And I was like, what do you mean? We've been watching TV together every night for like months and we do it all the time. He was like, no, we haven't, Taz. You have been tap, 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 tap on that laptop every single day. You think you've been here, but you've not. We've had the TV on, but you've not. You've not had a conversation with me. You've just been on your laptop. And it's not just work, right? It's the constant trying to fit everything into your life. But the cost of success on your relationships is sometimes not realized until you come through the other end. And finding balance is one of the hardest things to do. And I'm not here to talk about work-life balance because, I don't subscribe to a whole bunch of stuff that's out there on that. But there is a cost of success that you don't realize at the time because you are so tunnel vision about trying to get on in your career. I have zero regrets about anything I've done. And I am so lucky that I have friends and family who are so proud of me. I wouldn't change a thing. I'm not the kind of person that has regrets, but I do look back and learn from that. And it has made me want to show up differently as I get on. There's probably like 2 other things that are worth talking about, and they're more complex, right? So if we go back to when that person said to me, finding a partner who's going to be okay with you being successful and making more money than them, all of that kind of stuff was difficult. This is going to sound weird, but it's really, really honest. When I got married, I was 35. Most of my friends had been married, had kids. My sister's got like a 18-year-old son. He's going to be 19 soon. And she's younger than me, right? I decided to not do that earlier in my life. And when I decided I was ready to be serious about, kind of meeting someone, having a life together, settling down. I hate that word, but settling down. I started to make different choices. But I did meet people who looked up where I worked, who asked me how much I earn straight away, who had a problem when I offered to pay for dinner, who had said to me, yeah, I'm not going to be able to maintain something where you're at work, where you are going to be so into your work, where you need to come home and you're working, that kind of stuff. When I met my husband, it was about making a wise choice. And by that, I mean, I knew who the person was and what they were about and where they stood in their own power, in their own masculinity, how they felt about me, my job, etc. Since meeting my husband, my career has accelerated faster than it did before him. And it was fast as it was. And that's because I build my career on my own through the work I do. But the system I have around me is built for a home. And so many people don't have that. So I picked knowingly, I made intentional decisions. This isn't a man who's intimidated by my success. This isn't a man who doesn't support my dreams. God, he's here every single time I record the podcast episodes doing all the tech support with me. This is someone who listens to my 100 million billion ideas, business ideas that I've got because of my ADHD, got a new idea every 5 minutes. But picking the right partner directly correlates to the success you can have in your career. And that is absolutely, absolutely something we don't talk about enough. This is someone who celebrates how much I earn. This is someone who's proud of how much I earn. This is someone who has never, ever felt like celebrating me in front of their friends, their family, culturally as well, in the Asian culture, is a bad thing. And I think about how wrong I could have been about my relationship had I picked differently. So choosing who you have in your life, choosing your support system, whatever that looks like, romantic or otherwise, is so, so important. We have a 50-50 relationship, and that doesn't mean it's 50-50 every day. Some weeks he's 80 and I'm 20. That's probably more common. But some weeks I'm 80 and he's 20. And mine will be for work. His will be for different things, like, being there for his mum, or, he's got to travel. When we first met, I was on flights all the time. I was traveling all the time. I don't travel now. He travels all the time. And so having that partnership is so, so important. And that partnership can look like it's in many forms, but whoever you're around needs to support you you. So whatever you've picked or you're about to pick, friendship, romantic, who you surround yourself with, needs to be something that you choose wisely if you want to get on in your career, because careers and relationships don't exist without one another. The second thing I want to talk about, and this isn't talked about enough, is your relationships with people at work. And the more senior you get, and I think I've said this before on the podcast, the lonelier you get, right? It's very, very hard to be able to trust people and open up to them as you get more senior in your career. Because at the end of the day, and I've made this mistake, you think that the people that you work with are your friends. But what I've learned more recently, the hard way, is there's a difference between being friendly and being friends with people at work. And unfortunately, and this is a hard truth, people who work for you or in your team or whatever can be your friends, but mainly you met them through a work relationship, right? So when it comes down to giving them feedback, to making career choices, to things that happen at work, they have their own personal interest at heart. And it is hard for people to separate you from that. And why should they? They shouldn't have to. And I've experienced this and it's hard. When you are not able to do things for people, when you are not of value to people in their careers and they've worked with you, that friendship doesn't exist. So know the difference in your career about who you're friendly with and who you're friends with. And remember, not every relationship will come with undeniable trust. I would say there's about 2 or 3 people I can trust completely, implicitly around my career that I work with, that I can tell everything to, and it doesn't matter what their personal interest is and how that's vested. But you learn to keep a lot to yourself, and that's why your relationships outside of work are important. And also sometimes with your peers, you can have great relationships and tell them everything. But for some of them, they'll be thinking about, how does this impact me? What does it mean for me? And so knowing the difference between friendly and friend is really important at any stage in your career, because you're often going through similar things, or there might be an impact from something that they might do. But as you get more senior and you lead people, it's a lesson I've learned the hard way. And unfortunately, because we spend so much of our time at work, it would be really nice to think everybody's our friend. So do I have a laugh with everybody? Yes. Do I have fun? Do I like to be lighthearted? Do I have lots and lots of people who I talk to, who I have a good time with at work? Do I like to create that vibe in my team? Yes. Are they my friend? Probably not. And that's not me being harsh. That's because they want me to do things for them. And when I'm not valuable, that friendship dies away, right? So yeah, it can become quite nuanced. And I've had a lot of examples of that recently, but very interesting. And there's an expectation that you show up for people more than you actually can in a professional capacity because they're your friends. Very hard to navigate, but it's just something I wanted to talk about that I don't think is talked about enough. And it's something I've had to learn the hard way. We're taught a lot of lies about the corporate world and successful careers, right? And I think it's important we talk about them. So the first lie is, work hard now, enjoy it all later. You know, if you work hard in your 20s, it will pay off later. I don't think that's completely untrue. I definitely did that. But I think building a successful career means that you have to keep raising the bar for yourself. And the world changes very quickly. Look at how quickly AI has come into our lives. Look at how quickly technology has changed things. You get left behind if you don't keep going on top of stuff. But I truly believe you can put in the work earlier to lay the foundations for later. I always say 2 key things. One is, I did what I had to, so now I can do what I want to. And the second is, early in your career, say yes to everything. So later in your career, you can say no to more things. The second lie we're always taught is like, rest is reward and you have to earn it. So therefore, spending time in your relationships with the people that you love is something that you have to earn. It's a form of rest. It's a form of, reward. It's not. It's what you need to survive. It's survival. And I wish I'd known that earlier. It's what you need that keeps you going, especially in environments that are not built for us. In a corporate system that is so hard to survive in most days, you need your safe people and you need your safe spaces. Third lie is the people who love you, the people who matter will be there no matter what. When you have time, they'll still be there. That's not true. The world moves on. People's lives move on. Relationships end. My friends that I lived with when I was at the peak of my career both lived in London. One's American. She's moved back to America. And the other one lives in Wolverhampton and I live in London. They won't just be there because life moves on for everybody. So you have to invest in those relationships as much as you invest in your career. And sometimes relationships will be 80 and career will be 20. And sometimes it'll be the other way around. But you have to realize that the two need to coexist for your own safety and for your own success. And the fourth lie, that's really, really important, and that I wish I had known earlier, but I believe to be true after what I'd been told, especially after getting it wrong when dating before I met my husband, is that your success makes you harder to love. And as women, sometimes that is the narrative. You're too much of a career woman, you're too ambitious, you're too successful. Therefore, you have to dial yourself down, you have to water yourself down, you have to make yourself more palatable to other people. No, you don't. No, you don't. And if you don't feel like this, and I'm no relationship guru, the right people will find their way to you. And if they're not right for you. I have not watered myself down in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think I've become more myself and discovered other parts of me. But actually, I make more money than I did when I met my husband. And that's not just because of inflation. I've taken calculated career moves. I've changed jobs maybe 4 times since I met him. I bought a house since I met him, 2 houses. I've started my own podcast. I started Office Real Talk, all of those things. You don't need to dial down your success to make you more palatable, more desirable, or what society tells you for the other gender, for men in particular, girls. We don't need to do that. So here's what I want to kind of land. I did what I had to, so I can do what I want to, and I've got no regrets about that. I wish someone had taught me that being present is a skill, and it's not one that I learned early. And it's probably not one I've completely got right now because of my ADHD. I gave a lot of myself to my relationships at the cost of myself sometimes, especially at work, to people I work with, to the teams, etc. And I have no regrets about that. But I just wish I'd learned that those relationships aren't always two-way, because most people are friends with you because it benefits their career and their progression. And actually learning the difference of what's friend and friendly, I think I've probably only learned in the last 3 months. Yep. Really hard truth. Like, I've learned that in the last 3 months, and I've had a very, very long career. So yeah, that's an interesting one. And my first ever boss, she always said to me, it's lonely at the top, Taz, and she's not wrong. The last one that is really important. The life you want comes at the end of everything you want to achieve. No, you have to live it as you go along. The relationships you nurture, the rest that you give yourself, the grace that you give yourself, the ties that you build, the things that you pick for yourself, the partners you pick, the friends that you pick, how you show up for them, they can't come at a cost of your career. The journey is the bit to enjoy. The process is the bit to enjoy. And I always believe that, oh my God, once I've got it all, and, especially with my ADHD, I'm always like, oh, when I get to that bit, or when I get to that bit. I remember when we moved into our house, we'd literally been there like 2 days. And I said, oh, I've seen our next house. And my husband was like, we haven't even unpacked the boxes. Taz, we don't always have to be doing the next thing. And my brain is wired to constantly chase the next thing, the next dopamine, the next job, the next bit. And because of that, and when you're always on, you're not showing up for everything and everyone around you and enjoying everything as it goes. So nurture those relationships and enjoy them as you go, because they will make the process more enjoyable. And we all need that support and helping hand, especially to survive this corporate system. Here's the permission I want you to give to yourself based on my lived experiences. You're allowed to be successful and to be in fulfilling relationships, whatever they look like, but you have to be intentional about it. The right people in your life will never expect you to be smaller. They will help propel you, accelerate you, protect your inner circle, and more importantly, protect yourself with the choices that you make. Nobody tells you the cost of success up front and how to navigate relationships while you're doing it. I'm figuring it out every day as I go along. Some I've got right, some I still need to pour into, some I've learnt lessons on the hard way, but I am pouring into that and learning, and I just wish someone had taught me that that is also something to navigate along the way. Yeah, this one was a bit tougher for me to talk about. I hope it's been interesting. It's personal. It's my lived experience. Thank you for listening so far. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Bye.